Welcome to Machine Tool Maniacs, the podcast where machining, fabrication, entrepreneurship, and bringing ideas to life collide. Around here, every story is a success story. I'm Matt, a second-generation manufacturer who's been in the shop since I was in diapers, learning the tools, the trade, and the people behind it all. Nearly everything in our daily lives is passed through a CNC machine. And we're here to spotlight the makers turning raw material into reality. Whether you're dreaming big or building bigger, this is your inside track to making it happen. Welcome to the podcast. I have with me Rocky Parkerton, and he is the founder of AZ3DPrint and RegolithForge down in, where's it? It's down in Arizona.
Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, Arizona. So introduce yourself, Rocky.
I'm Rocky Parkerton. Thank you for having me. And I've been a machinist now for a little more than 20 years. I started in 2005 after 10 years in the military, and I got a late start to it. So I've been plugging away at it now for a little while. I've owned my own company for a little more than 5 years now, and we're just plugging away, churning at it.
So tell us about, one thing I think is really cool about your story is your transition from being in the military and serving 10 years, and we appreciate your service. Tell us about that transition. Did you get any sort of machining exposure in the military? What led you to wanting to get into this industry?
So I was communications in the military, a technical job, a lot of different platforms. But when I got out, I went into the local community college and they looked at what my job description was in the military, and they gave me a list of communications, like electronics, technical type jobs. And I wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with it. I was just done. So, and I knew I was gonna transfer into something completely different, and I was gonna go and just throw myself at it. And so they gave me another list of all their programs, and I saw machine tool technology, and I was like, oh, that's all the right words, So in doing that, I signed up for a full load of classes. I think it was 20 credit hours. The VA representative that was helping me out with that whole process thought I was insane. They wanted me to pick the first manual machining class and just try that first before you throw your life into something. I said, no, I'm 10 years behind the ball. I need to get this done right now, and there's no time like the present. And in my very first class was a GD&T class. I met a kid who was a deeper kid at a local machine shop. And he, on the first night, he asked if I was looking for a job and said, oh, I'll introduce you to the general manager of this shop that had 75 employees. Mm-hmm. And I was off and running. I went in, I talked to the general manager, filled out a paper application, and he looked at it and he didn't want to hire me. He said, you made $75,000 tax-free last year. You need to go do something that your military experience is going to make you a lot of money at. Why are you here?
Yeah.
He said, you've got no tools. You've got no experience. I don't know what to do with you. And so I told him, I asked, what's the lowest paid guy in the shop make? And he said $8 an hour. And I said, pay me that. Let's see what happens.
And this is 2005?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
The very beginning of 2005, like February, March. And so he started me off. He made me a shop hand, basically, for a master machinist who had been in the trades for 30 years. He's one of the guys who worked on NASA stuff his whole life. He was doing Inconel parts and Molly parts and crazy small stuff with odd 80 tapped holes in it and crazy intricate little. He's a widget maker, which is what he called himself, and kind of the kind of nom de plume that I took on after the fact is, yeah, I'm a widget maker. If it's the size of a shoebox and it's got super tight tolerances, that's right up my alley. I've got parts that are 4 foot long and 3.5, 4 foot in diameter, but it's not the thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
If I've used a forklift to put parts in the machine, but I prefer not to.
I get it.
Yeah. So yeah, I did that. I was doing a full boat of classes. I was working 40 hours a week. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, kind of just doing the exact same thing I had done the year prior while I was in the Army. I just dedicated myself to it because, like I said, I felt like I was 10 years behind the curve and I was trying to catch up. So I had worked there about 2 years and I was starting to get pretty good at being, a programmer and a setup guy for this other machinist. And they opened up an apprenticeship program and I was the second name on the list. They gave me and a few other people who were veterans preference. And so I fell in and I started the apprenticeship program, did that for 4 years. When the classes were tapering off, because I was running out of classes to take, I just started working more hours. So it ended up I was working 55 to 65 hours a week and taking a class here and there. And it was just off to the races. So by the time 4 years had rolled around, I think, the fourth highest paid guy on the shop floor out of probably 50 people in the machine shop side of things, because I just threw myself at it. Anytime there was somebody old with a white beard who was cranking handles on a manual or doing grinder work or working on the wire EDM or whatever, I had been there the whole time asking questions, and I ended up being a grinder guy, a mill guy, a lathe guy, a wire EDM guy. And, there wasn't a piece in the shop that I couldn't run. I even did finger brake and, stuff like that for sheet metal. So like pretty much everything in the shop, there wasn't anything I didn't use.
What was the bulk of the type? Was it a lot of CNCs in the shop? Was it a good mix of everything?
Yeah. At the time, the only manual machines that I ran were mills and lathes, and it was just to meet the apprenticeship requirements for the number of hours. So I think kind of decidedly, the guy who ran the apprenticeship would go, "Hey, you need to finish out your 300 hours on lathe work for manual lathe." And, so the next lathe job that you get, regardless of what it is, do it on a manual lathe. So it sucked plenty. It was definitely a whole lot of not fun, especially when you're doing like crazy shapes and stuff like that. But because I had the wire EDM and the experience, I could do my own custom, tools, sometimes even custom carbide tools. And I cut a tool profile on the wire and then take and I cheat like hell. But if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough.
That's right. Okay, that makes sense. I don't have a lot of manual machining experience either, just to the extent of which it was required to get qualified. But my dad had a machine shop, and it was all CNCs. He didn't even have a manual lathe in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's where we're at now. And I don't foresee me ever purchasing a manual machine for anything, because though I can run a manual mill or a lathe, I have never thought it was worthwhile for a shop to pay me to do it. because I can outrun myself on a CNC machine, 100-fold. And like, why? Why? Even if it's a one-off simple part, I can knock it out on a CNC faster than I can on a manual.
Well,
Why not?
yeah, they're kind of a ball and chain, right? You can't get away from
Yeah,
them because they require human intervention.
yeah, yeah. So I know there are still uses for manual mills and lathes, and I know a couple of shops in town still a decent portion of their shop is manual machinists. But it's just not what I'm trying to build here. So, we're skipping over it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. So, well, so one thing I'm curious about, well, a couple things transitioning from the army. What skills and mindsets do you think you developed in your service that benefited you transitioning into a machining career?
I think the best. I was a non-commissioned officer uh, in the Army, so at NCO I was a sergeant, and they have something in the military called be no do, and it's a leadership idea that you want to be the example. The simplification of it is be the example, know how everything is supposed to go, and then do it. Set the example, do the thing. Don't be the guy who comes in and says, "Hey, I need you to do it this way," and then the next time somebody sees you do it, you're doing something on like completely different, a departure from what it is you're telling people is the standard. So it's pretty much, know the standard, be the standard, or showcase the standard, you know, that kind of thing. That's, I think, been really important in a machine shop because, like, everything is about process. And as soon as you have people departing from the process that's been proven, things start going wrong, bad parts getting made, that kind of thing. And like you can make parts really, really fast, but you can make bad parts really, really fast.
Yeah,
you know. And
for sure.
so especially if you've got multiple shifts or multiple operators doing the same thing, if you show somebody, unclamp the vise like this, pull the part out, do this, set it aside, blow out your vise, put the next part in like so, hold it, keep your hand on it, clamp the vise. Did you feel the part move? No? Okay, good. Like now did you feel the part shift? Unclamp, start that part of the process over, fix it, make sure that you've got the right clamp, pull it out, check again. Maybe you have a chip. You had to have felt either you felt something or it felt right, you know. And so you tell people that, but then you come by and people are cutting corners and they're not blowing out of ice. It's because they're departing from the process. And then you find chips impacted into the side of your parts and stuff like that. It's like, so that idea, it goes to just about everything you find in a machine shop. There's always a process to do things the right way. And there might be a half dozen. There's my old boss used to say there's 47 different ways to skin a cat. You just have to pick one. But once you pick one, stick to it because you picked a process and now you're doing it. Don't mess with your process because you're just going to mess with your parts. So stuff like that. It works in business too. How you deal with customers. You want to be the person who says what you're going to do and then does it. You don't want to be the person who's saying one thing and doing another. That never goes well in any kind of relationship. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for military lifestyle. But that and also discipline, time management, an understanding of what your limitations are. If you know you can't survive on 4 hours of sleep and come in the morning and make good parts, get more sleep. You know, you have to know you have to know where your lines are drawn. Some people can, some people can't. And if they can't, don't, you know. And probably the last thing is, like, I'm water rolling downhill. I don't let anything frustrate me. Nobody's shooting at me. I haven't heard a mortar in decades. You know, I'm like, there are no problems in the world that are unsolvable. So just be water rolling downhill. You hit an obstacle. If you can't knock it out of your way by hitting it, then roll around it. Keep going. You're trying to get to the bottom of the hill. You're not in a fight with the rock. Like, you can let every little thing that hits you in the face every day bother you, or you can let it roll off you and you can just keep on being productive and move forward, you know, get things done.
That's great insight. Yeah, I can see a lot of value in all that. So, do you obviously this has led to your leadership and how you lead, and it's probably safe to assume that you're trying to instill these values into your employees as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Luckily, right now, say most of the people that work for the company are veterans. So yay us. We've got a bunch of people who already know how to set the standard and how to live by the standard, and, you know, and clear communication lines and stuff like that. And we're still small, like I said in our previous conversation. Like, we plan on, if we get to the point where we have 20 people working under the same roof, and we need one more, we're gonna break off and open a separate shop and stand up, you know, another, and we'll just turn it into cells, pretty much. That way we don't have any of that backstabbing, infighting, politicking, like all the things that happen when your group grows a little bit too big. We want to stay tight knit. We want to make sure everybody knows, hey, we're all on the same team. We all have a part to play. And we're all trying to push this thing forward. And the more successful this is, the more we get to pay our employees, and the more successful they get to be. And even if it's, say, a guy who wants to be a machinist, if he wants to come in here and learn from scratch and work here for 4, 6, 8, 10 years and then go do something else, you know, more power to you. Like, no harm, no foul. But while you're here, you're on the team, you know. And I don't mind growing somebody and them jumping off at some point, because everybody's got to do their, you know, they got to manage their own lives. That's not my problem, you know. But finding people who want to do that, who have a hunger or a drive to try and come in and learn and do all the things, you know, it's really difficult nowadays, and the way society is put together here in the United States, you know, not just the education system, but, say, society at large. There's not a big emphasis on personal pride and workmanship kind of thing, and wanting to be able to make things with your own hands, you know, putting your own brain to a problem and solving it. And I wish it was. And we're trying to foster that here as much as we can, you know.
Me too. That's one of the main goals of this podcast, is just to inspire
Yeah.
people. You know, and to elaborate on what you said, it kind of got me thinking. There's almost a certain, if you, let's say you did have somebody that came in and worked in your shop, and you apprentice them, and then they went on to start their own shop. There's almost a certain amount of pride and honor you could have. Like, hey, I fostered somebody's skills so they could go out in the world and create something and keep the ball rolling. That's really cool.
Yeah. Say, over the last 12 years, I've had a dozen, probably, people come in to apprentice under me. And in those last 12 years, all but 2 fell out in one way or another. I'd say probably a half dozen of them fell out of manufacturing altogether, just because they didn't want to hit, they didn't want the stress of having to hit time and material and deadlines. They didn't want to work with customer supplied material because they were scared. All the stresses that can come with being like not just a machinist, but a prototype machinist, or aerospace, the high dollar, high precision, small parts kind of thing. A lot of people see that as like a daunting thing. And when I came into the industry, I looked at all those jobs as something that I had to try and get. Like, I want that job because it's a challenge, because I see a guy over here with 20 years of experience who's walking away. Like, general manager comes in with some customer supplied material and he's like, this job is going to suck. Who's going to do it? And guys with 20 years of experience are turning around and going, nope, not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I want that job. Because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to screw it up and I have to fix it, or I'm going to screw it up and I have to do it again. Like, I'd rather take that hit and at least attempt the thing, rather than try and not give myself the added skills that I'm going to gain by taking the thing,
Yeah.
And that's happened, I'd say, mostly in my first 10 years. I think by the time I got to about the 10-year mark, I had already seen my hardest jobs, because I was in a good position in some, aerospace industry type stuff, where I had seen all the hard jobs already. And I'd say in the last 10 years, I haven't seen a lot of stuff that surprised me. I've seen bad engineering and stuff like that. And part of my job now is actually steering poor engineering back into a manufacturable space.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a real thing. But I've got 2 people that apprenticed under me who now run their own machine shops. They're the lead machinist, the shop foreman. They're the guys who everybody goes to. The other probably 4 are working in like material procurement, running the AS 9100 program, that kind of thing, where they decided to go push paper. And the best thing for them was being on the shop floor and learning how things actually get made. So it earned them, a desk job where they actually make good money. But I wouldn't be fulfilled if that was my only job, even though I do have those jobs now as a business owner, but
mm-hmm.
I still get to make stuff. So I get to split,
Yeah.
and go. The best days are when an operator doesn't show up and I get to go run the machine. Like, like I'm perfectly happy, because at the end of the day, I get to look down at the table, see all the done parts, and go, well, at least I got that done today.
No, there's a certain level of, and I think machinists and programmers and people in this industry don't give themselves enough credit for the fact that this is a creative job. We're taking, and yeah, maybe you're not designing the part, but you're designing how that part gets made. You're designing the process that takes that from a computer model or a drawing to reality. And that's a huge thing. And there's a lot of pride in that.
Well, thankfully too, if you work your way to something like I'm doing now, we actually do product design for people. And on the back side of that, I get to do all the process engineering, the fixture design, the machine programming, the setups,
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Good stuff. So backtracking a little bit. So you're in this apprentice program. What came after the apprentice program for you?
So I continued working there for a couple of years, and then I got offered a little bit better job, a little bit better money, and the general manager that hired me ended up going somewhere else. And within 2 weeks after he was gone, I was like, okay, he was the glue that was holding me in the job. And so I scooted out right after he did. And I bounced a job. I did that next job for 2 years. Then my wife gets a really, really good paying job in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And so we up and moved to Virginia Beach.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so all the way across the country. And I didn't look for a job. I was supposed to stay home for a month and put the house together, kind of thing. I didn't put out a resume. I didn't do anything. I moved my LinkedIn profile from Tucson, Arizona to Virginia Beach, and I immediately had multiple job offers because there are a lot of machinists in the Virginia Beach area, but they're shipyard machinists. So those are the guys that are turning the 4-foot diameter shafts that are like 32 feet long down to 3-foot diameter shafts. They don't have widget makers in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
So yeah, so like special operations group, SEAL Team 6 is there. I ended up taking a job with a company that was in the pipeline to give kit like all the wearable gear, firearms, like custom stuff, straight to SEAL Team 6. And so I took that job. Yeah. And so I did that for 5 years. And there was another shop down the road whose owner had been in business for a couple of years, and his shop was floundering. But he was also a former Navy SEAL guy with an engineering background. And he came to me one day and he goes, hey, if I give you a percentage of the company, would you come over here and build my shop, like fix it for sale? Because I'd like to be able to sell out of the business in a year. In the meantime, somebody else who I'd been acquainted with, being a machinist in town, who owned a semi-large firearms manufacturing company in town, kind of in the same neighborhood. He's the person who came in and bought that company a year later.
Okay.
And the day he bought it, he said, okay, all the jobs on the shop floor, we just need to finish them out, fulfill the contracts. We're not going to renew. We're dumping all those customers. He goes, the only reason I bought this shop was to get a hold of you and the guy who was my shop foreman at the time, or my right-hand man. And he goes, as soon as all this stuff is fulfilled, we're going to sell all these machines that are in this building and we're getting rid of it. So just work on that. And in the meantime, come with me down the street to his shop, where he had 5 times the amount of equipment that we had in the shop that I was in. And so I got in a truck with him. We drove down the street. We got to his shop, and he goes, so I fired my shop foreman yesterday because I've got government contracts to give 3,000 firearms to the Brazilian government. And we're 2 months into the contract, and all the billets on the ground in crates. No setups have been done. Nothing's been programmed. He goes, I need you to fix this. We have 90 days to have complete firearms tested and shipped to the customer in Brazil. And so it was all AR-15 style firearms in 5.56 and 300 blackout and 9mm, 1,000 each. And so we had to program we had to create tooling, fixturing, programming, the whole thing for all those machines. And so we did that, like more 4-hour nights of sleep later.
That's a task.
And yeah, and it's really funny when you're running machines. Yeah, I had 9 people working for me, and we've got operators running machines. I'm running machines, and we've got 2 guys in the back who are actually building guns when the stuff comes back from anodize, and they're building out complete firearms. And then they're bringing them, as they get done, they're bringing them in like 10 at a time. And I'm taking firearms and test firing them in the CNC bay into a bullet catch in the middle of the night, and the sheriff's department showing up like, you guys making more guns? Like, oh, okay, cool. As long as it's you guys that are doing all the shots fired, it's okay. Like very strange, but it's always been fun like that.
And you guys were making the actions and the lowers all out of solid billet?
All upper and lower receivers. We had that contract was all out of castings.
Okay.
But we've done billet stuff. We did billet stuff after that. I did billet stuff at the shops before that for like SEAL Team 6 and FBI SRT, like AR-10s and 308 stuff out of billet.
Wow.
Low receivers, like match sets too, where they're keyed to each other and they're perfect kind of things for really high precision type stuff. So a lot of fun.
Quick pit stop. If you're enjoying the show, hit subscribe and drop a rating. It helps more machinists and makers find us. Tell a friend. Tell your crew. Tell the guy running the second shift. Follow me along on social media at machine_tool_maniac for thoughts, updates, and some funny memes. We're growing this community with more guests, more value, and more stories that push people to create. So if you've got a niche product getting manufactured or a shop with a cool story, email me at machinetoolmaniac@gmail.com or check out the website machinetoolmaniac.com for merch. All right, back to the episode. So what came next for you?
So I did that, and I had a family emergency here in Tucson, and I found out that I was going to have to come home and take care of a parent kind of thing, and there wasn't really anything I could do about it. So I sold out of that whole thing in Virginia Beach and moved back here. And again, I didn't look for a job. I didn't even have time to. I had to go to Maine, pick up a parent, fly back here, put them in the hospital, and it was crazy. And I remember distinctly sitting in the New York airport, and I was on Facebook just bitching because there was a hurricane that was making me late to go pick up this person who I had no idea what their condition was. They had a stroke, and it was just horrible. And somebody here in Tucson who was a machinist in town that I had known for more than a decade, we were still Facebook friends. He goes, "Hey man, what's going on?" And I was like, I have no idea, but it really looks now like I got to move back to Tucson. And he goes, "Well, what day are you going to be here?" I was like, "Well, I'll be there Monday night, probably at midnight." And he goes, "Okay, Tuesday morning at 9:00, we've got an interview at the bike shop, which is it's kind of like Skunk Works for Raytheon missile systems."
Oh, okay.
So, like, I literally had to go out to Walmart in the middle of the night and get a tie because, I was going to show up and be Dapper Dan,
Yeah.
So I went out to Walmart. I bought a tie. I showed up at this interview at 9:00 in the morning, and it was supposed to be an hour-long interview. It was for a machinist position. But when I walked into the place, there were at least 5 other people who had worked there or who were working there at the time, who I had worked with in the past at the place that I did my apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I walked in, everybody's like shaking my hand and slapping me on the back. And then I get to the guy who's run the place for 30 years. And he's like, well, I guess, we need to sit down and have a little conversation. And he goes, the position I was trying to fill is the guy who had left the position decided to come back. And he goes, but I have a position that is more managerial. He needed somebody to write white paper on doing an expansion of that shop. And it was like a $25 million, blow up of bringing that shop up to the times kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because their newest piece of equipment was 15 years old. They had a couple of CNC machines that were like getting long in the tooth. And they wanted 5-axis. They wanted new technology, And he goes, and it looks like you're the guy for that because I'm looking at what your last shop looked like. And like, that's what we want here. We want to be able to do all the things. And so he hired me literally to write white paper. But I told him when I hired on, I'll work here for 2 years. And because I knew giant company, I'm going to be there screaming in the wind for a couple of years. And I wasn't willing to donate any more of my life than that to it. And so I did. And I would go in for special projects and work in the CNC department from time to time. They'd get something that, because they had a lot of Mastercam programmers, but funny enough, none of the CNC machinists there could write G-code on the fly. And they had some stuff come up where they were like, yeah, we just can't get it to do what we want it to do. So I would go in and do the thing, oh, okay, I'll just do it tonight, and so they would when they would shut the machine down at the end of the night, they'd just leave it on for me and I'd come in and work for a few hours and fix it. And they'd come in the morning and be back in a place where they could continue on with their project kind of thing. So it was really nice for a couple of years,
Yeah, sometimes you just can't get CAM software. Well, it'll make the code just way more obnoxious and long than it needs to be. One time I was fighting with a company. They were trying to make fly fishing reels, and they wanted to rough out a good, because obviously fly fishing reels have a lot of material removed out of them, and they just wanted to go in with an end mill and just rotate the C-axis and feed the end mill just straight in. And they could not get their CAM software to spit out clean code to do that. And I was like, guys, this is like 3 lines of code. I'll write it in 2 seconds,
Right.
So
yeah. Yep.
I get it.
So yeah, the last year or so, I guess back up a little bit, I had an engineer at the first shop that I worked at in Virginia Beach who did some really interesting mechanical designs for some pretty trick, like really surprising push button release and relatch type stuff that I always had a lot of respect for, And he was a little bit younger than me, but he had been in the industry just about as long because he actually started straight out of college. And so he and I started doing product development while we were both at Raytheon there for a little while, helping small companies around town, figure out little projects. And then when I was ready to pull the ripcord and get out of Raytheon, I was like, well, how about, I had customers asking like, man, I really just want to feel what that's going to be like in my hand kind of thing. I just want a prototype. So Barrett Locke, the engineer, he had come out here to Arizona before I got back here and was working, at Raytheon after I got to Raytheon. We kind of did this weird little hopscotch all the way across the country.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, it was very strange. But we ended up working in the same place again. Now he's at Anduril full time in Atlanta, Georgia. So he's remote.
Oh, okay.
Still does engineering for us, when he has time. He and I were doing these little prototyping type things, and then we both threw in together and we scraped together like $120,000. We bought two 3D scanners. We bought a Fuse One Formlabs 3D printer and a Form the SLA machine, which we've since gotten rid of. And so I had these two different 3D printers in my home office. I had a seat of SolidWorks. I had 3D scanners, and we're doing reverse engineering and stuff like that. And I was like, I think it's time to get out. So when I left Raytheon, I just put everything into doing product development.
And what year about was this?
So that was 6 months into COVID. So it was 2021?
Oh, okay.
And because we had gotten our business license just before COVID, so 2020. And by the time I was ready to make it the full-time job was 2021. And because of COVID, I had a couple of customers that I'd been doing product development for who had been taking my designs and going to China and turning them into injection mold parts or machine parts, reshoring them, over here. They had parts sitting on boats offshore, and they were like, well, now we've got, tens of thousands of dollars sitting offshore, and it's going to be out there for 3 to 4 months. And they're like, we need to sell these parts right now. They were like, what can you do to get us functioning parts like quicker? So I went downtown and I leased a space. We purchased our first production 3D printer. It was a $500,000 loan on a Hewlett Packard MJF machine that prints glass-filled nylon. And we were off to the races, so we were stealing plastic injection mold work from China, doing it here. It cost the customer twice as much, but they got it in 3 days rather than, having to wait months.
Was that process of borrowing that much money that early on, was that a pretty difficult thing to overcome for you?
It was painful, but that's what made having some cash on the back end from the previous work, the Virginia Beach machine shops thing on hand to kind of get us the percentages we need. Plus we had contracts in hand that were going to make up the difference. So it wasn't as bad as you would think. It's funnier now that we're looking at a $650,000 lathe at mill turn and a $1.5 million metal 3D printer. That's a harder hurdle for us now than that first machine was for us then. But yeah. It's a little strange.
I can only imagine how scary if I decided to start my own business, and then, even with contracts in hand and all the comfort cushiness that you could possibly have that early on, and starting my own gig and borrowing that amount of money I would be awfully reluctant. So
because we went from 120,000 basically in cash that my partner and I threw in together that we we had in savings. And then it graduated immediately to a $500,000 machine on a bill. Like, yeah, it was definitely made for, I won't say it caused sleepless nights, because I still, like I said before, nobody was shooting at me and no mortars. So I always had the idea in mind that the only way I can fail is if I quit, or if I fail to engage. So I just stay engaged. I just keep going after it. Build
Yeah.
it will come, like.
So where did your first CNC machine start coming into play?
So we leased that place downtown and we were on a 2-year lease. We did that probably about a year into being there. I was ready, because I had people in town, other businesses in town that I had made parts for before when I was doing my apprenticeship again. Like, so word of mouth, like, hey, you're opening, you got a shop, you got enough room for a CNC. I could really use these parts, blah, blah, blah. And I just had a machine shop go under that's been making my parts for 20 years. And the guy wanted to retire, and he turned it over to an idiot. And now that shop's not there anymore. And so it turned into, we had been looking for a building to purchase to build a shop in. Actually, from before we leased the first space, we were looking for a space to buy, because I'd rather spend money on something I own than burning money on a lease.
Yeah,
that I'm not seeing anything back from, to be fair. And I very nearly at that point, probably 1 year into the leased space, moving my business to Tennessee, because Tennessee was incentivizing me moving my business there, to the tune of, we'll give you screaming deals and tax breaks, and any apprentice you bring out of these community colleges will pay half their salary for 2 years.
wow.
And yeah, right. Electricity in Tennessee at the time was 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Here it's 29 cents a kilowatt hour. With all this free sunshine we have in Arizona, power is 4 times, 5 times the cost that it is in some other states, which is insane. So, but we ended up finding this building, and we bought it in June of 2023, and we built it out. It took us about 6 months to get all the floors epoxy, knock down walls, and put in walls, and do all the things. And then in January last year, we moved in. And the week that we moved into the building, the 5-axis CNC showed up. And then
so that was your first CNC, the Akuma?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. So you went straight to 5-axis.
Yeah. No, I refuse to. It's funny, because I've actually had a shop owner tell me this. You could have bought 5 Haas VF2s for the price of that one 5-axis mill. And I'm like, yeah, but then I couldn't take on 5-axis work.
Exactly. That's what pays good.
Yeah. Right now, the machine's set up doing 3-axis work, but it's doing it on a pyramid with 4 vices on the pyramid, and it's spinning like mad, and it's got all the torque and horsepower that I want compared to horsepower.
Oh yeah.
And so I wanted to be able to hit a higher standard when it came to cycle times, and when it came to rigidity, and the parts being, correct, that kind of thing. Deflection is way less of a thing. Like, if people know machines, they understand that the heavier your casting is, the more rigid your machine is, the better your parts are going to end up. And
yeah, that Genos series Akumas. I mean, I know that's their budget friendly machines, but they are still completely based on their premium line. They're just mass produced versions of their premium machines.
Yep.
So.
And so, yeah, if we end up with, we will end up with another 5-axis. It's just 3 machines away. We'll end up with a pallet pull behind it. And, we'll go to the 500, do a pallet pull, and
the MU.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, those are back to the double column. That for some odd reason they went away on the MU 4000. They went away from the double column, and then they go back to the double column on the 5000. That was kind of a weird decision, but I guess they're going to do what they're going to do. So you said your next purchase is?
It's going to be a Multus B. I think it's the 300.
Yeah, mill turn environment. So
all mill turn. So no turrets, no other bells and whistles other than part catcher and bar feeder, and simultaneous 5-axis motion, because we've got parts. I've got parts that we're doing in the mill on a regular basis that I could switch over to doing on a bar feed, and it's automation in a box. So
it's 6-sided machining. That's
why
I a lot of times I go into shops, and it doesn't always have to be a Multus, but there's the Mazak Integrex, there's the Morisiki NTX, Doosan has their DNX 2100, but they all have a version of a mill turn, and it's crazy to me how many times you go into a shop and they say, well, I want to automate this. I want to have 2 machines and a robot that grabs this part from this 3-axis mill and sticks it in this 3-axis mill. And it's like, well, have you ever thought about just running this in a mill turn environment, or maybe even just a lathe with live tooling? Your only restriction there is as a 12-station turret, you run out of tool space real quick. So,
and then if you've got the Multus B with 120 tools, then you very rarely have to set up new tools. Like,
that's
you've got a pretty solid tool crib there.
And you don't have to worry about, did I put an OD turn tool next to a drill, and I'm worried about that drill running into the chuck when I'm right up against it. It eliminates a lot of that headache, but it comes at a little bit pricier price tag. So I guess it's just what you value. But I like your style, straight for the advanced stuff. So thank you for tuning into the first half of the episode with Rocky from AZ3DPrint. Be sure to tune in next week for the second half, where we continue our discussion on his plans to continue to level up his capabilities, as well as venturing into the world of developing their own products. And once again, thank you for tuning in to the Machine Tool Maniacs Podcast.